While the federal government was busy telling Canadians the coronavirus pandemic was making it just too dangerous to keep convicted violent criminals behind bars, a federal prison system bureaucrat was busy flying high and racking up the air miles. Today's story is a really great example of the do as I say, not as I do mentality that seems to infect nearly every single thing the federal government touches. And it comes to us from behind Blacklock's reporter's paywall today. Just look at this. France Greton in 2018 was appointed Deputy Commissioner overseeing Prairie Penitentiaries, though she lives in Montreal. Every change in leadership brings new thinking and new opportunities, Greton said in a statement at the time. Records show Greton billed taxpayers $50,283 in travel claims since last July. Expenses include more than $30,000 to maintain a furnished suite by the month in Saskatoon. Ms. Greton's primary residence is in Montreal, said the Correctional Services spokesman Dash. She was on a long-term work assignment in Saskatoon as the regional deputy commissioner for the Prairie region. In order to perform the duties related to her temporary work assignment, Ms. Greton leased an apartment from a Saskatoon apartment building complex with units dedicated to individuals on long-term travel status, said Dash. The Correctional Service would not identify Greton's temporary residence, but denied it was a hotel. Expenses for the suite included $8,293 billed after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ordered Canadians to stay home as a pandemic precaution. But this story is more than just a federal bureaucrat jaunting around the country and racking up expenses well after the rest of us were told to stay home, locked up tight, because the pandemic made normal life just too darn dangerous. I mean, these people have two sets of rules. We know that, one for them and one for the rest of us. And it all comes from the top down, as Trudeau was telling everybody to stay home and isolate from our loved ones. He crossed provincial borders over into Quebec to spend the Easter long weekend with his friends and family. But there's an extra layer of madness in all of this. This gallivanting prison official from Quebec was traveling all over the West in the midst of the pandemic, while the same prison system she works for was releasing violent offenders because the pandemic made it too unsafe for violent offenders to be kept behind bars. Let's go through a few examples of this. Family annihilator Joe Rollo butchered his wife and two kids to take up with his girlfriend back in 1976. Look at this from the Hamilton Spectator. Rollo was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. In 1976, he killed his wife Sandra and their children, Jason, 6, and Stephanie, just 5, in their Hamilton Mountain bungalow. Sandra and Stephanie's bodies were soon found in area waterways. Jason has never been found, and despite Sandra's sister's constant pleas at parole hearings, Evil Rollo has never ever said what he did with that poor little boy's body. But instead of rotting in a prison cell for the rest of his natural life, now Rollo, well, he's living full-time in the community with yet another girlfriend because his failing and ill health put him at risk of contracting the coronavirus in prison. And the judges letting these monsters out are actually citing Justin Trudeau to defend what they're doing. It's here, buried in a global news story. Look at this. Court records show that even those with long criminal histories have won release under various conditions, including a man with 23 convictions identified only by the initials TK. The judge wrote that in normal times, TK would have likely been detained following his latest arrest on drug trafficking charges. Yet, as mentioned, we currently live in extraordinary and very challenging times, he wrote, quoting a report that said prison inmates were more vulnerable to the new coronavirus because of their confined conditions. The judge went on to caution the pandemic was not a get-out-of-jail-free card, but a mounting body of court rulings cite COVID-19 in decisions ordering the release of prisoners. In one decision, the judge quoted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau telling reporters on March 29th he was very concerned there could be greater vulnerability to COVID-19 in Canada's prison system. And just a couple of months ago, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair was forced to admit that hundreds of federal inmates were released amid fears of the coronavirus. Look at this from APTN from April 20th. Blair said more than 600 federal inmates applied for early or exceptional release because of COVID-19. When pressed for more information, Blair told reporters he didn't know the exact number of inmates who had applied or had been released to date. So this is a serious matter of public safety that you would think the public safety minister should know something about, but instead at the time, Blair was busy going after who he thinks the real bad guys are in Canada. Just 10 days later, lawful Canadian gun owners were attacked by Blair. Blair was treating them as pre-murderers while releasing actual murderers onto Canadian streets. And 5 days after Blair banned 1,500 models of popular guns and shotguns from the hands of the most lawful segment of the Canadian population, there's this. An Ontario justice has given no additional jail time to a man involved in a brutal and unprovoked attack that left a woman unconscious for several weeks, citing concerns of an increased risk of COVID-19 in the prison system. Robert Hearns of Leamington, Ontario, pleaded guilty to the aggravated assault of Haifa Gabriel, whom he struck in the head with a bat June 2018, fracturing her skull and lacerating her scalp. Now, if it was too unsafe in prison for these goons to be kept behind bars where they belong, it was too unsafe for Greton, who is in charge of the system that punishes these goons, to be going anywhere, especially on the taxpayer dime. But friends, this is Canada in 2020, and we imprison the innocent and healthy under house arrest, and we release the guilty for health reasons. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. At Rebel News, we've expanded our coverage during the coronavirus pandemic, while our competitors in the mainstream media have actually reduced theirs. But we think now more than ever, the government needs to be held accountable to the people for their spending and for their decisions. Now, you at home can help us do that work, because we'll never take a dime from the government. Just go to helprebelnews.com.